live somewhere that does not have the autumn season in comparison to other states where it gets very cold and the leaves change color, I have been thinking of different ways that I can make myself feel as if this is actually fall right now. One of my favorite ways to make myself feel really engrossed within a season is by reading seasonal books and by drinking seasonal drinks, watching seasonal movies, listening to seasonal music. So I thought it would be fun to share with you some of the seasonal drinks that I've been making at home, along with some of my autumn TBR or books that I have already read and would love to recommend for you to read as well. My whole idea for this video was to give you guys really cozy drink ideas that you can make at home easily, and then you could select one of the books that I talk about and read it with a drink. I'm going to be sharing 3 drinks: a vegan pumpkin cream cold brew, a butterbeer latte, and my favorite one of all of these, pumpkin juice. The reason I chose these is because I have been making these and they're easy to do. You don't have to go out and buy a lot of special ingredients to make these at home. That's like the best part of all of this. It takes, you know, under 2 minutes to make all of these drinks. And then after the drinks, I will be sharing with you my autumn TBR. So if you guys want to watch the drink portion, you can continue watching, or you can check below in the timestamps to skip ahead to the book section. That being said, let's start with the first drink. The first thing we are going to make is the vegan pumpkin cream cold brew. You will need a can of coconut cream, some maple syrup, 100% pumpkin puree, pumpkin spice, and of course, coffee for the cold brew. I started by adding a half cup of coconut cream, and honestly, this was so good I could have topped it on my coffee by itself and it would have been amazing. Next, I added 1.5 teaspoons of pumpkin puree, 1 tablespoon of maple syrup, a half teaspoon of pumpkin spice, and 1 teaspoon of vanilla. Then I just mixed it together by hand, and this alone was so incredible. It tasted like some sort of pie filling. And then I put it on top of my cold brew, and something I will say is don't add ice to your cold brew. I did it because they do it at Starbucks and it adds separation between the cream and the coffee, but because I was using coconut cream, which is a vegan option, it actually started to freeze the coconut cream and it wasn't super creamy anymore. So just a note, don't add ice. Other than that though, this was an amazing drink and it turned out so good. Now for my new favorite drink, pumpkin juice. You can use a peach nectar from concentrate, or you can also use apricot. Apple cider, not apple juice, 100% pumpkin puree, pumpkin spice, and vanilla extract. To make a single serving, you'll need 1 cup of apricot or peach nectar, a half cup of apple cider, 1/3 cup of 100% pumpkin puree, a half teaspoon of vanilla, a dash of pumpkin spice, Once your pumpkin juice is blended, you have the option to drink it as is, or you can strain it. I decided to strain 1 batch, and I will say that I actually preferred it a little more on the chunky side. And to finish off this drink, pour it over some ice. Out of all of these drinks, this has to be my favorite because it's not warm, and I feel like I can drink it with meals, and it's the most refreshing seasonal drink I have discovered yet. I highly recommend this one if you have not tried it before. And the last drink I'm going to share with you today is the butterbeer latte. You'll need unsalted butter, vanilla extract, cinnamon, your choice of milk, brown sugar, and coffee. First, I poured a half cup of milk, 1 tablespoon of brown sugar, a half tablespoon of butter. I put it in the microwave for 45 seconds till it was melted, and I added my 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract afterwards and mixed it all together with my coffee. Then for the final touches, I put my whipped cream on top and added a dash of cinnamon. This was such an easy drink to make, which is my point in all of these recipes. I wanted it to be attainable for everyone, something that you could make in under a few minutes, and I think I found the perfect recipes for that. Now it's time to talk about some autumn reads. I wanted to start off with the most underrated books in my opinion because these are books that I thought were really good that I don't see often on people's autumn TBRs. The first book is The Halloween Tree by Ray Bradbury. Of course, you're going to know this author. He is the author of Fahrenheit 451, along with other books. This is a fantasy middle grade novel that takes place on Halloween. When a group of friends get together to dress up and go trick-or-treating, they realize that their friend Pipkin is not there, so they end up going to his house to grab him, and he says, "Go on without me, I will meet up with you guys later." Soon after, they arrive to this eerie mansion, discovering a huge tree filled with jack-o'-lanterns that reflect people's faces. And while they're there, they meet Mr. Moundshroud, who is kind of like the Grim Reaper in a sense. They realize that their friend Pipkin is in trouble, and the only way to track him down is to team up with Mr. Moundshroud, traveling through space and time to learn about the origins and influences of Halloween in different cultures. It is extremely nostalgic, the way that it describes just getting dressed up with your friends, getting ready to go out trick-or-treating as a group. Not only is this an absolute joy of an adventure, but it will teach you a lot about the history of Halloween and fall traditions. But if you aren't up for reading the book, there actually is an animated movie based off of this book that is narrated by Ray Bradbury himself. So I definitely recommend watching it because it is one of the underrated Halloween movies that you won't see too often. The next book I wanted to mention that I feel is underrated is Small Spaces by 𝓓𝓻𝓲𝓷𝓴 𝓡𝓮𝓬𝓲𝓹. 𝓓𝓻𝓲𝓷𝓴, you may know her because she is also the author of Bear and Nightingale. Small Spaces is a middle grade horror fiction. It's not super scary, you don't have to worry about that, but for being a middle grade book, it was really good. 11-year-old Ollie finds herself heading to the river to read at her favorite spot on a chilly October day in East Evansburg, Vermont. Only when she gets there, she discovers this unhinged woman that is trying to dispose of a book in the water. She is yelling and claiming that someone is telling her she has to do this and it has to be destroyed this way. But curiosity takes over Ollie and she decides to snatch the book and run. She starts to immediately read this book, but then one day in history class, they start talking about a field trip they are taking to this haunted farm, and she realizes the history behind this farm sounds very similar to what she has been reading in this book that she retrieved from this woman. As soon as they take the field trip to the farm, it starts getting very creepy. Weird things start happening. Imagine going through a corn maze or a haunted house and different characters popping out at you left and right. That's kind of how this book made me feel. This one is great for the autumn season. It involves scarecrows, getting lost in the woods with your friends and hiding from someone that is hunting you down, but you know, in the most innocent, spooky way possible. Overall though, for a middle grade book, I highly enjoyed this, and I did not think I would, but this book and The Halloween Tree just exceeded my expectations. The next book is Halloween Party by Agatha Christie, and this was my first year reading this, and I was immediately drawn to this book because Halloween was spelt the original way. During a Halloween party, a 13-year-old girl named Joyce starts boasting about witnessing a murder in the past. At the time, no one believes her, but when she is found dead later that night and Poirot comes to unmask the murder, he begins to question whether the murder she claimed to have witnessed was indeed real. This book gives me a really good mix between the Halloween setting and the murder mystery setting. Plus, on top of this just being a good book and me loving Agatha Christie, there is a TV series for this episode. It's more like a movie because it's an hour and a half long, but it's a TV series. So that is it for my underrated novels. Now let's move into maybe the more popularized novels that you hear most often, I think. Maybe not. Maybe there's a few in there that you haven't really heard. I hope so. That's my goal. The next book is Something Wicked This Way Comes by Ray Bradbury. This is a fantasy YA novel set on October 24th, 1962 in Greentown, Illinois. A sinister carnival rolls into town, ushering in Halloween a week early. Jim Nightshade and Will Holloway, two 13-year-old best friends, start to realize the carnival is a little off. Something's a little weird about it. So they decide to take it upon themselves to save the town from what the carnival is doing to the people, such as offering a promise of dreams and regained youth. I think the best part about this book is the magic that is within the writing style, because this book is written in sensory detail. Not only is this a pretty creepy, sinister book, it is very wholesome too and thought-provoking. It speaks about the fears of growing up, and it also speaks about wanting to grow up and the desire to be older than what you are. This is also an amazing book to annotate because there are incredible quotes that you will just want to remember and recite on a day-to-day basis. I kid you not. Really knowing is good. Not knowing or refusing to know is bad, or immoral at least. You can't act if you don't know. Acting without knowing takes you right off the cliff. Oh, and not to mention, this is also a Disney movie. So when you finish reading the book, you can go watch it. This next series I actually found by surprise because I went to Barnes & Noble looking for autumn reads for this video. And while I was looking, there was a girl standing next to me who got really excited over a book that was on the shelf, and she grabbed it. And it happened to be Five Nights at Freddy, The Silver Eyes by Scott Cawthon. There are 3 books to this series, and there's also another series, I think by a different author, which is still Five Nights at Freddy, and there's about, I think, 12 or 15 books. And I am definitely going to read the first one of that series as well, because I would like to know if it's something I could get into, just because this book was so good. This is a YA horror fiction mystery novel, and it is based off of the video game. This also isn't a autumn atmospheric read. It is more of a really creepy read that I feel is just good for the spooky season. So 10 years after murders happened at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza in Hurricane, Utah, Charlie, whose father owned the restaurant, returns to Hurricane, Utah to reunite with all of her friends. Curiosity ends up leading them back to the location of Freddy's, just to find it completely untouched and hidden within the walls of an abandoned mall. When they start exploring Freddy's, they realize that it is not the way it appeared as kids. The mascots that used to perform, the animatronics, they look a little weird and changed. I would compare Freddy's to Chuck E. Cheese. It's literally that exact thing. You know how they have the animatronics that sing for you? And if animatronics aren't creepy enough, imagine if the animatronics could chase you and people could fit inside of them. Oh my gosh. This book was frightening. I was shocked at how good it was for a YA novel, and it does get a little bit on the graphic side towards the end, I would say. Like for a YA, this book reminded me of going on an adventure with my friends when I was younger into an abandoned house that we thought was haunted, looking for ghosts and all the lights being shut off and having our flashlights and trying to scare each other. That is the whole vibe of this, except imagine finding the excitement you're looking for, and it's terrifying. I also really enjoyed this book because it felt very realistic, the way that things happened within it. And I did read the second book, but it started to peak a little bit more on the fantasy side, and I preferred the first one much more, even though they were both very eerie. If you are looking for something that will creep you out, this is it. The next book is The Forbidden Spell by Kaylee Rose. This is a LGBTQ adult fantasy fiction novel 𝓲𝓻𝓲, who is cursed from birth, has been forced to live out his life as a wolf. He's never visited the city, he's never had a conversation with another human being. That is until a fortune teller introduces him to a shape-shifting cat. This cat offers to help him break the curse, but in exchange for a heavy price. 𝓲𝓻𝓲 then finds himself pulled into a world of witches, potions, and spells, all while searching for the answers to his past. And his father may have the answers, but his father is dead. So he realizes his only chance of discovering the truth is to attend the coven's celebration of Halloween, when on this night and this night only, the living can visit the dead. This is a cozy Halloween tale that is filled with magic, mystery, ghosts, and pumpkins to satisfy all of your Halloween cravings. Oh, and there may be a little bit of romance too. The next book on my list is Cackle by Rachel Harrison. I have seen so many booktubers talk about this book and talk about how atmospheric it is, and I haven't read it, so I swear I'm reading it this year. I have to. So this is an adult fantasy novel that takes place in upstate New York in a small village. After Annie unceremoniously gets dumped by her longtime boyfriend, she accepts a teaching job that moves her from Manhattan to upstate New York. This town is just picturesque and perfect. The people are warm and friendly, but she is in dire need of a friend. And luckily, she ends up meeting someone named Sophie. Sophie is beautiful, charming, and has this magnetic energy, and she is instantly interested in being friends with Annie, and Annie wants to be friends with her too. Annie looks up to Sophie and can't help but want to be around her all the time, despite the fact that the rest of the town seems a little afraid of Sophie. Then Annie starts thinking about it and noticing odd things, like Sophie's appearance is uncanny and ageless. She also seems to wield a certain power, and she likes to curse people from time to time. But because Annie looks up to her so much and wants to be friends with her, she kind of puts that aside. This is a feminist and creepy, cozy novel that explores the boundaries of an empowered friendship and a toxic one. And in this case, Sophie is both to Annie. And the reason I like this description of this friendship so much is because it really reminds me of the dynamic between Henry Winter and Richard from The Secret History, and how Richard looked up to that friend group in such an unhealthy way that he was willing to give up his life even though he knew they were toxic. And the last book on my autumn reading list thus far is Boss Witch by Anne Aguirre. This book is about Clementine Waterhouse, who is a witch along with her family, and they discover that a witch hunter has been seeking out witches in their town. So Clementine has this brilliant idea to go and befriend the witch hunter at a bar and see what he's about. But what she doesn't expect is for him to be attractive and to fall for him and for him to fall for her. This is a spicy, sizzling romance. It is an adult fiction novel, so I would not recommend reading it if you are under a certain age, because it is very graphic. There is this enemies aspect to it, which I really love, and lots of secrets, obviously. There's also the elements of magic that are used within this book as well in order to conceal the fact she is a witch from a witch hunter when they are getting together, which is really funny and interesting because that's not something you'll see often when you read a romance novel. So I did enjoy this one. It's not particularly a autumn atmospheric read, but it does involve witches, which I'd say is perfect for the fall season. So that is it for all of my autumn books, and I did throw in some movies in there and all of my festive drinks as well. So again, as I mentioned before, my goal for this video was to give you some autumn drink recipes you can make at home easily to have on hand whenever you want to cozy up with a nice fall read. And yeah, hopefully it gave you some ideas to do just that. That being said, I hope you're having a wonderful fall season, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.